from the beginning, I would like to say a few words about Dan, because Dan was when we've been working on the preparation of Polish bill to auto-enrollment. It means PPK or pracownicze plany kapitałowe. Dan and Smart Pension in total were very helpful, always open to share experience, knowledge. This is something what was for us very, very important, and we appreciate very much, Dan. Thank you very much. The bill is already done. We have 2 weeks of the valid law, and January is the moment when we are starting, and July the moment when accumulation will be on. So Dan, could you tell me, as a person who is experienced and knowledgeable in this specific topic, it means pension, what is your opinion about Polish auto-enrollment?
So I don't know if anybody knows about Polish auto-enrollment or PPKs, but it's going to be pretty massive in terms of the impact on employers in Poland, for good reason. The big thing about the Polish reforms are they are kind of ambitious. They're looking to cover, I believe, is it 11 million employees? Over 1 million employers. Next year, from next July, starting with the big employers, will need to start auto-enrolling their staff into not a pension, legally it's not a pension, but equivalent of a pension or retirement scheme. And it's good to be so ambitious, because you look at, we do lots of analysis around the world, and you see many countries with terrible public finances, a very old population, and they're doing nothing about it. I mean, not to offend anybody from Spain today, but Spain's public finances are disastrous. They're struggling to pay for their state pension, and they should have introduced something like auto-enrollment maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, like Australia did. UK a bit late, but that's now maturing. So in terms of Poland, it's ambitious. It's going to affect a lot of people, but it's the right strategic choice for the government or governments, but also for employers and especially for hard-working people. So it's the right choice.
What do you think? Will PPK will be help for Polish pensioners?
I think they should be. That's the whole point. You save more for retirement. I mean, we did some smart pension in the Polish market. We did some primary research and interviewed lots of people, lots of journalists, employers, employees. And one of the things that came out quite strongly was people would tell stories about the state pension and wondering whether from the ZUS that would be enough to live on. My neighbor's on 200 euros a month. I don't want to be that person. So PPKs will encourage people to save for retirement. You never know, it might have impacts on how they look at their own finances and maybe look to kind of accumulate more assets over time if that's possible. But at its core, it's going to complement the ZUS, the state pension, so they're going to have a better retirement, more comfortable retirement. What their target for retirement, how much you need in retirement. Sometimes the measure across the world which says you need to earn 70%. Your retirement, needs to be 70% of your salary, roughly when you're going to retirement. That's not always, that's a blunt way of looking at it. It's all kind of, it's individualistic. There's different measures that can be used. But at the core, it will complement the ZUS, and so people will have a better retirement with an income which is closer to what they're used to, and a lifestyle that they can protect and preserve when they reach retirement, as opposed to dropping off a cliff edge.
You know, we are feeling, but we are not able to understood properly what means auto-enrollment. We will knew that after 2-3 years, because this is something what we heard, but we cannot say nothing more, because it's this very smart, intelligent way to use people's procrastination, myopia, and I'm very interested into discover how it works. But what are the similarities from your perspective between Polish and UK auto enrollment?
And the similarities, I think the core is its design, which is good for a lot of financial products, actually using behavioral science, behavioral insights, inertia is at the center of auto-enrollment. If you ask somebody to join the scheme, they're more likely not to join a pension or save into a pension. In fact, very unlikely. If you auto-enroll them into a pension scheme, then they have to take a conscious decision to opt out, then they're more likely to stay in that pension scheme. Now, in the UK, only 10% of the population who've been auto-enrolled have opted out. And the government initially thought it'd be 25%. It's much, much lower. So people actually want to stay in the pension scheme. But at its core, the big similarity is the fundamental behavioral insight and behavioral economics of inertia, which ensures more people across Poland will stay in the PPK and keep saving, hopefully for years ahead, so they have a bigger savings pot at the end of the retirement.
Are there any specific solution in Polish auto-enrollment in our PPK which you would like to use in UK system? It means the differences which are maybe not discovered at the moment in UK. What do you think?
There's a few actually. I think the Polish design of these auto-enrollment reforms are probably they've learned from the UK, like the UK learns from Australia and Poland learns from the UK. I think they're slightly simpler, which is good. There's lots of different thresholds and eligibility, kind of salary, and in the UK, which is a nightmare for the payroll industry. But using technology, rules-based technology, we can solve that problem. So in Poland, they're not employing that. So in the UK, for example, if you earn £10,000 or more, you're auto-enrolled. And if you're auto-enrolled into your pension doesn't apply to your whole salary, it applies to a portion, and that moves each year, which is quite confusing if you're an employer, quite busy, trying to worry about other things. So Poland's just got rid of that. It's a simpler approach. There's no earnings bands or different criteria that have to worry about. There's some of the other things, you know, if you change job in the UK, you've only worked there for a year, you might have accumulated a very small pension pot, you go and work for somebody else, that pot stays there unless you physically take action to move it and consolidate it over there. So the big problem in the UK is that you can have lots of small pots which can get lost, and that's one of the big debates in the UK at the moment. Poland are going to avoid that from day one by, I think it's right saying, having kind of what we call sometimes a pot follows member. So if you change job, there'll be a mechanism the government will have, which means that your pension, your PPK, will follow you to your new job, which is great. You're not going to lose your pension, you keep sight of it, and it kind of accumulates as one as opposed to lots. And I think some of the flexibilities is probably a big difference in terms of if under certain criteria, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but under certain criteria in Poland you'll be able to withdraw some of your retirement. Now in the UK you cannot do that until you're 55. But in Poland there'll be some limited flexibility where you can withdraw some of your funds, I think, for a first house purchase.
Yes.
And serious ill health and something like that, which is a great flexibility because people don't always have it's hard to save, put money into your pension, put money to save up for deposits, money's only goes so far for millions of people. So that flexibility is a really fantastic element, which I think people will like and increase adoption of PPK.
Yeah, this serious illness is very important to fill those savings as a personal and private, because we thought that maybe that will be important. After these several years in UK of existing auto enrollment, this is 6th year of existing system. What are your conclusions? What is your opinion? How do you perceive this?
I think it's a big success in the UK. It's one of the biggest, I think, social economic reforms has been for a long time. It's quite interesting because you get, very rare in the UK, as you've seen with Brexit, do you get all political parties agreeing with each other. On these very rare occasions in the UK where they all get in a room and they agree with each other, these pension reforms in the UK have been agreed by all parties, and each political party has had a role in taking it forward, which is really, really important. Some of the big lessons is to, hold your nerve. You introduce the reforms and people start to challenge, say you should change things, do that. You don't do that, you keep to the plan. And And you may find, like in the UK, the market changes and flexes, so you might want to, in the UK specifically, they're raising the regulatory standards for providers who want to be a part of the pension auto-enrollment in the UK, and that's really important. But things like, but as a government, from your perspective, I used to work in the British government for a period as well, looking at some of these things, and so some of the things is to keep things under review as well. So keep things fixed for a period, but in the background, looking at review, is the charge cap the right amount? Are the range of providers subject to the right level of regulation? Are there particular aspects you need to upgrade or downgrade? So I think it's keeping on your feet in terms of how you administer and regulate the market as well. But the big thing is to keep your nerve, because in the UK there's lots of challenges saying, oh, we should change this, or let's just get rid of that and do this. But it's a long-term economic reform. It's decades, it's 20, 30 years. Australia had 20 years, and they've hit trillions worth of assets and own King's Cross. The pension funds in Australia now owns King's Cross. In the UK have invested in Crossrail, own half of Manchester Airport, build docks and ports. And that's where Poland will get to in terms of investment in their own infrastructure internationally, as well as people having pot for retirement. It'll be a huge economic vehicle to drive Polish growth.
Has auto-enrollment in the UK helped people to aside money for those retirement? What do you think? Or other products or maybe other solutions were developed by auto-enrollment?
I think it's pushed people to raise their standards across the market and to think about, instead of thinking about some of the traditional providers, instead of thinking from a product view of the market, let's try and shove this, let's try and shove that. Because there's so many consumers now, they're looking at their kind of the market from a consumer perspective like we do. I think tech firms always go in the shoes of customers. And so there's been some flex in the market in terms of how they adoption. But even at Smart Pension, we'll be introducing complementary, like an ecosystem around the employer and the employee. So salary finance, so loans via your employer to your employee. So that employee may want to buy a car and they're normally having to pay 25% interest. A loan through your employer, through the payroll, is less risky. So maybe you can get that loan for 5%, save hundreds of pounds every month to buy that car or whatever you need. And so that's important. And we're also looking at other savings products like individual savings accounts, which are kind of tax-efficient wrappers, tax-saving wrappers, rewards, wider benefits. So trying to provide a better service for those people. But people want, slowly but surely to their attitudes, want to stay in, want to save more. Once they kind of, I suppose once you earn more, you can make a choice to save into other vehicles.
And for the final question, lessons from your experience in UK as a country and as your personally as a very let's say experienced person, for us, for implementation, what is the most important thing which shouldn't be missed by us?
I think in terms of the market and where you are, so it's July for large employers, so you've still got a bit of time before medium-sized and the smaller employers. But it's mobilize the market, mobilize the employer base, mobilize the employer representative bodies in terms of communications and marketing and communications, and get those messages across that this is coming. You might not like it initially, but it's something that's important. You will like it, and explaining what their requirements are under the law so they take it seriously from day one. But communications right now must be a priority, I guess.
Means portal. Portal is already in process.
Yes, and divert people to the PPK portal.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Cheers, Robert. Pleasure.